Okay, so this evening we are going to have a discussion about LinkedIn. A lot of you will already know me, but I spent 8 years in the military as a Royal Signals officer. I left 7 years ago. Then, gone quite far ahead there. Then I spent a bit of time in recruitment, which is particularly pertinent tonight when we're talking about LinkedIn. And it's really where I first got involved in LinkedIn. Now I use it very much from a business perspective, but it certainly was a very useful recruitment tool when I worked for FDM. I also set up an ex-forces program whilst I was there, and I worked in project management for a number of years. Lots of business change projects. In particular, we had I managed some multi-million-pound new builds refurbishment projects for the Priory, and during that time I also built up a property portfolio, and that's what I do now full-time. Mentor and support clients to build their own property portfolios. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today is the power of LinkedIn and why you should be using it, what types of posts we have. Specifically going to go into engagement posts, can't go into all the different posts, but I'm going to have a quick look at that. Recommendations of things to do, who fails and who succeeds on LinkedIn, the benefits of posting articles, which I think is really, really important for small business owners, your ideal client, and of course we'll go through any questions at the end. Just bear with me a second. Okay, great. Sorry, it looked like it wasn't recording there. Apologies, let's crack on. Okay, so are you harnessing the power of LinkedIn? There's 575 million registered users on LinkedIn. And someone's come up with a figure that it's 277% more effective at generating leads than Facebook or Twitter. Don't know the validity behind that, but certainly from my perspective and my experience, my target market, I have far more success on LinkedIn than I do on Facebook. I don't do anything on Twitter, so I can't really attest to that. Now, this is quite interesting, I think, and this again applies to a small business, but 74% of clients choose the company that was first able to help them along their buyer's journey. And what I think is interesting, if this all ties into certainly my ethos of trying to help people, trying to give people content, and trying to help them along that journey. So they see you as an expert in the field, and the fact that actually you've provided them with some support, some knowledge, whatever it might be, they're more likely to use you as a paid client. So I think it's really interesting in terms of LinkedIn. The 9 billion impressions that you have a month, I'm not quite sure the exact definition of an impression, but that is, that's views, that's clicks, that's reading of articles and so forth. But this is where the opportunity comes in. Only 3 million users are actually sharing content on a regular basis. So if you look at that headline figure of 575 million, only 3 million are actually using it on a regular basis each week. So there's a real key opportunity here for you to jump in and to start using LinkedIn because it's not overexposed. 98% of content marketers use LinkedIn for content marketing. And that's the mindset that you need to get into if you're using LinkedIn to promote your own business and to get clients to sell on LinkedIn. You are a content marketer, okay? And the professionals are using this day in, day out to do it. And then if you are looking for employees as well as a small and growing business, if you find an employee through LinkedIn, they're 40% less likely to leave the company within 6 months. Now, I know from my recruitment background, recruiting people is difficult, it's time consuming, and it's expensive. So anything that you can do to reduce those costs is beneficial. So of those 575 million users. There's 25 million in the UK. Now, I think population-wise, we're about 68 million. So it's probably about the majority of working adults who are on LinkedIn. Most of them don't use it on a day-to-day basis, but they will see your posts when they log in. So it's a really big market that you can reach compared to, say, Facebook. As an example, you're limited to 5,000 friends. I think you have potentially a far bigger reach on LinkedIn. The engagement is not as consistent and it's not as instant as Facebook. And a lot of people will follow you silently. They won't comment on every single post that you write. But if you can keep in their mind when they come to use you or come to want to use your expertise, whatever your product is that you're selling, they will come to you. So don't be perturbed if people aren't commenting all the time. I have lots of people that I've had discussions with that have never ever even commented on anything that I've written on LinkedIn, but they've seen the content, they've seen the engagement, and then they've reached out to me. So these are all the different types of posts that you can have, and I'm going to cover engagement posts very briefly. Lessons learned. So learning from your mistakes, what you've done, so that people can take that and don't have to make the same mistakes. Case studies are really important. I know a lot of people on here will be property people. So a case study of your refurbishment, your projects, how you've got investor finance, whatever it might be. Those are really great posts that you can have on there, and you can use those as an ongoing basis, especially with the refurbishment. If it's something that is going on for 10, 12 weeks, well, you've got to post a week there from your refurbishment project. And that ties into your how-to education piece. Again, telling people what you've learned, whether that's from a professional perspective, if you're a builder, telling them about it, or just from an investor's perspective, telling people about your journey and how you got on. Relevant news, that's quite obvious. Whatever comes in, and there's a lot of property stuff and things that people want to share. And I would say on this, don't get perturbed when you see lots of people posting the same sort of thing, because you'll be in your network. You have lots of people who will be very, very similar to you, but you also have a whole group of other people who aren't similar to you. So just because other people are sharing and talking about something, that doesn't mean that they're actually reaching your other part of your network that aren't into that network. So I think that's really important. Personal company updates, what you're doing. Project updates, again, I've sort of talked about that. And I'm not going to go into all of them, but these are all the different types of posts that you could have. And then, you have your own post. You can share people's posts as well. You can use other people's content, but crucially, make sure that you tag someone in and you reference them if you are. So as an example, you can go to, if we could do face-to-face networking, you might watch someone's presentation, take a couple of pictures and say, yeah, fantastic, great presentation, great networking afterwards. But just make sure that you don't pass that off as your own work. So that's really important. I suppose it's a bit of a badge of honor when you see people doing it, and I do call people out that do, but just make sure you don't, I suppose. So engagement posts. Now, these are interesting because they don't have to be relevant to what you do on LinkedIn, and they're important because this one post can expand your reach and people can see it, and then with the LinkedIn algorithm, it will then look at subsequent posts and promote that even more. So this is one that I did a number of months ago, just about marketing and Michael Jordan. And this was after I watched the Netflix show. Can't remember what it was called now, but all about the Chicago Bulls. Not particularly a basketball fan, in all honesty, but clearly, Michael Jordan is an absolute icon. Now, hashtags are really important here. in terms of getting your story out. So I chose marketing and a couple of branding and relationships for this post. And what was interesting about it is at this time I had about 5,000 views on this after 6 days, which is probably about double in terms of the number of views I would get on a post usually. And one of the reasons might be because I put this hashtag in here, marketing, that I've got 20 million followers. Now, a slight word of caution here. This was very much certainly in my mind, a marketing post. I'm talking about partnerships and Nike and Michael Jordan and so forth. Don't use hashtags that are popular if they're not related to it. Okay, but I put something in here in terms of marketing, and then you get something that ultimately you might be trending. So I think it's a really useful thing to do. And a lot of people don't necessarily do it enough, or they do it without realizing, really. But if you post something in terms of engagement, it's great because you get lots of people who see what you're doing, and then your subsequent LinkedIn posts that are then more about what you do and what you want will get higher views. So content sharing, honestly, I think it is non-negotiable if you want to get clients and if you want to get business through LinkedIn. You have to share content. So here are some of my recommendations. It's not an exclusive list, but you need to review your profile, your picture, your headline, or your business pages that you might have on LinkedIn. Business pages don't work particularly well. They really don't, unless you are a global business. Business pages, they're there for social proof. They work in that respect. But if you're posting and you want to reach people, then use your personal page. So I've got about 18,500 connections on my personal profile. I couldn't even tell you in terms of business pages that I've got how many connections they are. It's the low hundreds. I don't really promote it, but it's there so that people can have a look at it if they want to see more about me. I have tried posting from the business pages, but again, because I've only got a few hundred people who like it and connected to it, it doesn't really get anywhere. And I don't think it's a great use of my time really to try and promote that when actually I can promote what I'm doing through my own personal page. If you are posting, I would recommend a minimum of 3 times a week to try and help that consistency that you get. If you take a week off, it doesn't matter. Don't beat yourself up and don't post rubbish just to get a post out there. But importantly, LinkedIn is different to Facebook and Twitter and so forth. You get penalized if you post too much. So it doesn't want to present itself as this big social networking piece. It's a business networking platform. So if you post 4 or 5 times a day, the algorithm is just going to reduce the reach that you have, and it's really not worth it. So put thought into that one post a day. I wouldn't bother posting on the weekend. In all honesty, think about your best times to post in the morning. I usually do it around 7:30. I get my VA. I've got a VA who works in the Philippines to post. And other good times are just before people leave work, so 4 to 5 o'clock, or perhaps in the evening, 7 to 8. If you're posting at midday or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, then you're probably wasting your time. Test and adjust and have a look and experiment. But with LinkedIn, you have what's called the golden hour, and the more views and the more clicks that you get within that first hour, then the wider it goes. So if you're posting something at 2 o'clock in the morning, no one's going to read it until 6, 7 o'clock, and therefore actually LinkedIn isn't going to promulgate that post further. So think about prime times when to post. create an engagement post to get going. I think it's it's a really interesting thing to go and do. Stay out of anything controversial. Remember, it's a business networking site. Yes, post potentially things about politics, but personally, I'll stay away from things like Brexit, anything to do with the government, taxation, anything like that. Honestly, I'd leave it well alone. But yeah, that's just me. Anything that's religious or argumentative, again, you're just going to get a proportion of people on your back from the start, and you don't want that in my opinion. Some people do that successfully. Make your own choices. One of the things that I would start out to do if you're not a user of LinkedIn, give 5 recommendations to people you're connected with, people you've worked with, people who have done a good job. It's all about sharing, because then you should go and ask for recommendations as well. And we're not always that great, especially as small business owners, and actually asking for people to go and do that. But do it, even if it's not necessarily related to what you're doing now. Think about a time when you have done a good job, when you've got a promotion at work, whatever it might be, and ask someone to write that recommendation for you. Connect to additional 10 people a day, write them a personalized message, don't copy and paste. Anyone who's on LinkedIn will see the impersonalized, is that a word? Messages that people send you as soon as you connect into them. And we talk about, I'm going to talk about types of users later, but I just filter it out, and I don't think that you get any success by doing that. Take your time, have a look at someone's profile. It only takes 30 seconds to go and do it. Pull something out of that and make it personalized and send them a message. Join some groups. Groups are really interesting on LinkedIn. Again, a massive difference from Facebook. The engagement is really small. It is really, really small. However, because of that, if you're posting in a group, actually your post will stay there for a longer period of time. Okay, and don't again expect people to like it particularly, and don't expect people to reply to it. They'll see it, they'll clock it, hopefully go into their back of their head, and it will all play into that big marketing piece that you have and help create awareness. Okay, but people generally don't have great engagement in groups. And I can tell you that because I've got a group called the Inner Circle, which you can join. It's a property group. There's no selling or anything like that. There's probably about 500 people who are in the group. I put maybe 2 or 3 posts in there per week. I've got some other regular posters in there as well. Again, it doesn't get a great deal of engagement, but if you've got something to say, put it there. It only takes an extra 20 seconds, 30 seconds to post what you are doing on your profile into a group. Okay, and again, you're going to get a different audience because you're not going to be connected with all the people who are part of that group. So actually you have a different audience to who's on your personal profile. So feel free to join that group, and then go and join a whole load of other groups that are relevant to what your purpose is. And then this is this big one, tell people what to do, and don't forget what your call to action is. You shouldn't be doing it on every single post. Here, come and buy this. Come and buy this. It shouldn't be like that. It should be a little bit subtle, but perhaps every 2 or 3 posts, you say, well, this is what I do. If you're interested, come and speak to me. Come here. Come to my website. Go to, message me. Call me up. Whatever your call to action is, don't forget to tell people about it. Okay. You can create all the content that you want in the world, and it can be fantastic, and people can look at it and digest it, but there has to be a purpose behind it. And ultimately, the purpose behind that is to generate more business, more clients, to promote yourself, to find a job for those that are looking in employment. Don't forget about that call to action. So we've talked about a little bit on some of the people that fail. Picture you'll see these, and if someone sends you an invite, or indeed you've invited someone yourself, and immediately there's this big copy and paste message that you get telling them about something which generally you're not interested in. The big one seems to be about crypto at the moment. There's a whole load of that that's going around. The other one that I get, because I've done a lot of work in project management, I get a lot of people trying to sell me project management courses. And it's really interesting, because if they spend 20 seconds looking at my profile, they'll see that I've got pretty much every project management qualification that there is, and there's no need to be pitching it to me. But they just done a search on project managers, I'll come up and they pitch it to you. So you want a bit of foreplay first, I think, rather than just diving straight in. So don't be one of those people, but also don't be a ghost. Okay, don't be someone who collects contacts and connections and then just doesn't do anything. Fantastic. If you just want to hang out on LinkedIn all day and look at people's content, then great, but you're not going to get anything out of it. So engage with people. Again, try and do that subtly, but don't take it too far, like the social butterfly. So the social butterfly, someone posts something on LinkedIn and they're, fantastic, this is brilliant, love what you do. Okay, great. If that's all you ever do on your engagement, you're making people feel great, but actually you should be asking pertinent questions. You should be presenting yourself as an expert. You should be adding valuable content rather than just treating it as a social networking purpose. That's what Facebook is there for, certainly what Facebook used to be there for previously. But LinkedIn is very much a business networking tool. So that's why you don't succeed. And there's a bit of an error there, but that should say the strategist. So those that succeed are those that have a strategy. Okay, so you think about what your posts are in the week coming up. You plan for that. You have a call to action in mind. You're thinking about who your clients are. What sort of content they're looking for. How does that fit into your marketing strategy, your goals and your aspirations? Okay, so it's not just waking up in the morning thinking, oh, I've got to post something on LinkedIn, and I'm as guilty as that at times as anyone else. But that's when it's going to take you time to think about what you're doing. If you can plan it out in advance, then that's when you're going to be successful. So it's all about the strategy. And I've got a few points here. So you've got to think about yourself. You're a brand. Again, especially, and I'll talk about a lot of small businesses. I don't think there are too many people here who are working for big multinationals. But you've got to think about yourself as a brand. You're selling your business and your products. So you need to define what your values and vision are. If you want to work with people, you want to work with people who share your goals, your values, and your vision. So if you don't know what they are yourself, how on earth do you know who you want to work with? Be genuine. I think this is so important. I really do. And I'll give you a perfect example from the property space. I see a lot of people who, when they're engaging with estate agents and letting agents, they will pretend to be someone else. So if, for example, you're thinking about buying a property, you might call up an agent to try and get some information about that area, try and find out what the prices are. all that kind of stuff, and people will pretend to be a buyer. Just don't do it, in my opinion. Call them up and say, look, I'm an investor. I'm thinking about buying this property in this area. If I do, then there's an opportunity for you as an agent to take this on. Can you tell me about it? I don't see the virtue in not being genuine, in my opinion. And that ties in with being consistent as well. It's a lot easier to be consistent when you're genuine and you're honest. But it's also consistency about how often you post. Again, nothing wrong with taking a week off, 2 weeks off. Everyone gets kind of overwhelmed, run out of ideas, run out of time, and so forth. But if you're looking at using LinkedIn as a strategy to communicate, what you don't want to be doing is having a week where you post 5 times and then you have 6 months off. Okay, there needs to be a level of consistency that you have in there. Find your niche. I'm going to talk about your ideal clients later on. But it's important that you find your niche, because you're actually only communicating with a small number of people. And you can't communicate with everyone, and you can't make everyone happy. So if you can niche down to the people that you want to speak to, then you can develop the right messages for them. If you took 100 people, random people, and you tried to sell your product or service to all of them, you're likely to fail. But if you take the 5 people that are potentially interested in what you're looking at, then you're likely to be successful. So find your niche and niche down. Be active, again, not just on your posts, but on other people's posts, and looking at pages and trying to interact. I've talked a lot about the fact that there's often not a lot of interaction on LinkedIn, and therefore that's an opportunity for you. If there's not a lot of interaction going on, then you can present your ideas, your expertise, and so forth, and it's a hell of a lot more visible than it is on Facebook, because that drops off very, very quickly. So LinkedIn lingers a lot longer. Tell a story. Think about your story. What's your background? What's your purpose? What are you doing? Everyone has a story, and don't be afraid to tell it. Sync up your website and social media. LinkedIn should be part of a wider piece. So the tone, the branding, everything that you have in terms of what you do on LinkedIn should tie in with everyone else. Because someone will look on LinkedIn, they'll find you, they'll say, fantastic, great, I think that's something that's really interesting. And then if they go and check your website out, which people will do, if it's got a completely different tone of voice, then it's going to be difficult for that person to go ahead with you. So just make sure that that's all consistent. Position yourself as the expert. What do you know, and what is your expertise, and why should someone listen to you? Okay, we all have different levels of expertise. If you think about being an entrepreneur, for example, well, fantastic. Someone like Alan Sugar or Richard Branson, well, they have far more expertise, far more experience, far more knowledge than we're ever going to have. But you can't access them. You can't talk to them. You can't buy their service for a day, a half a day. They're absolutely out of almost everyone's reach. So position yourself as the level of expert that you need to in order to attract the type of people you're looking to work with. And focus. Again, plan out your strategy. If you're looking at LinkedIn as something that you want to use, then have that focus. Again, don't dip in and out of it every 3-4 months. If you do that, you're just not going to get anywhere. So I want to talk specifically about articles, and we talked about the different types of posts. I think articles are a great thing to do. They take a bit of time to get up and running, but I've seen, personally, the benefits of that. So it positions yourself as an authority. It's a written piece of work that is there, and you can find it on Google, not just LinkedIn. You can repurpose old content, things that you've written, videos that you've been in, previously. This is something I'm very, very guilty of, in all honesty. I'll put quite a bit of time into content that I produce, and then often I'll never use it again. And it's a mental thing that I need to get over, because actually I can use it for a whole new audience time and time again. So you can repurpose your old content. You can add it to your profile, which is massively important. Again, your profile is your selling point into you. So if you've got some good quality articles that are in there, people look on your profile and they'll have a look at your articles. And then it can reach beyond your first level connections, which is incredibly useful. So however many connections you have, whatever number that is, if you post an article, there'll be people who are your second connections or third connections that are able to search for and read that article. So it's a way of reaching beyond your connection base. Add hashtags. We talked about the power of hashtags. With marketing earlier, add those hashtags that are relevant to the article. And then this is a really important one. It's one I struggle with on LinkedIn. On your post, if you're just putting on your personal profile, you have a character limit. I think it's 1,300 characters, which isn't a great deal. It's really not. So with with an article, you have no character limit. I'm sure there probably is, but I've written 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 word articles on LinkedIn and never had an issue. If you're literally copy and pasting War and Peace, I'm sure they will stop you at some point. But essentially, there's no character limit. They're really, really easy to create. Just go on articles on LinkedIn. You can add photos. You can put things in quotations. There's no programming or anything that you need to do. It is so easy to go and do, and you can just play around with it. You can put it in draft as well, which is great, so you don't have to write things in any one go. Usually I'll write something in Word, copy and paste it, and then format it, put things in quotes, add some pictures, etc. And then this, I think, is one of the USPs of it. They're searchable on Google. So if you're, again, writing something that is quite niche, that other people aren't writing about, if someone then searches for that in Google, they can find it. They can find your article on LinkedIn within Google, and they can click on it, and they'll see your article and they'll see your profile. Now, it doesn't happen straight away. It takes a few days for it to be indexed, but you can find it, and I think it's a brilliant thing to have. And again, it all adds into your kind of social proof that you have. And again, it's promoting your personal and company branding. So make sure your articles are on point and they align with what you're trying to do as a brand. So here's some of my LinkedIn success that I've had this year. I've got 18,500 connections. Constantly have offline conversations with investors. Ultimately, that's what you want to do, and that's what the strategist does. It's not just about having conversations on LinkedIn. You want to have those private conversations. You want to have those calls, those Zoom calls, those email chats with people offline. I've got an investor who wants to invest £1 million over the next 2 years. I've been invited to be a founding partner in an ethical property network, which is really, really exciting. I found this guy called Andrew, well, he found me, and we've really hit it off. He's spoken to 84 other property investors, and he's invited 3 or 4 people to be founding partners of this network. So he found me through LinkedIn and the post I put out. So it's really, really useful for that. I have a mentor program that most of you will know about. I also have a military-based business venture, which is really useful. As you know, used to be a captain in the army. Someone that was in my troop, my first troop when I was a troop commander 13 odd years ago, got back in contact, and we've been able to now visit on army barracks and talk about what we can do for people in terms of investing in property and also insurance. So again, this came back all through LinkedIn. Got potential commercial conversion in Leeds, and a really exciting supported living project in London as well, specifically for new mums who are homeless. So partnered up with someone who is a maternity nurse, and that's something that's really quite exciting that we're looking forward to. And you wouldn't have seen this yet. This will be out in the new year. I've got a dozen or so episodes of a video series called Do You Remember the First Time, which I'm talking to property investors about the first time they invested in property. And I've had people who have invested this year and someone that invested 40 odd years ago, and everything in between. So I think that's quite exciting. And they're all people that I've got Melissa, my VA, to contact through LinkedIn. So those are just some of the successes that I've had, and it's the sort of thing that you can have if you invest your time and effort into LinkedIn. So I'll quickly go through your ideal client. So you want to have a look at what their values and goals are, because you want to tap into what they're looking for. So what do they strongly believe in? What are the characteristics of their personality? They need to resonate with you. And if they don't, that's not a problem, because actually it just means that they're not the right client for you. And there are plenty of people who are out there who are the right client. There's a lot of people in here who invest in property, and we're all different. We all have different personalities. We work in different ways. And the ideal client for me or anyone else is not necessarily the ideal client for you. So you need to really delve into the detail of this. So these are some of the values that you may be looking for in your ideal client. So they are on LinkedIn. As I said, there's 25 million adults who are on LinkedIn. So whoever your ideal client is, they are there somewhere. Incredibly important, you need to tailor your content to your clients. I've talked about that before. Don't try and communicate to everyone. You want to be finding out who your ideal client is and talking directly to them. Literally look at it as a one-to-one channel. You've done all that work on finding out who the ideal client is, then try and talk to them directly. So they're buying into you, ultimately. What are your personal stories? What are your personal experiences? What's your expertise? Again, it all varies. And tailor your profile and content so that it's what the client wants to see. And again, your profile is like a portal into you. I might have this on the next slide, I can't remember, but you need to be thinking about your client and the questions that they would have for you. Why do they want to buy something from you? Why on earth would they trust you? Why would they like you? What is your USP? All of these questions that your clients have, you need to be answering those in your profile. So it's really important. It is your selling point to your client. I think that's probably what I wrote there. Yes, you're individually messaging your ideal client. Yeah, pictures. People can look at pictures. That's just the reality of it. You need to make sure that you have a decent profile picture. You know, again, it's not Facebook. You know, get rid of your partner, get rid of your dog. Don't just put up a company logo. That's, again, unless you're Nike or Reebok, no one cares what your company name is and what your company logo is. They're looking at you to start with, so it needs to be a picture of you. And then you need to make your headline a strap line. You know, what are you gonna do for your client? Don't just tell them what you do. Tell them what you're going to do for them. And there we are. You know, answer their questions. What questions they're going to have for you. Almost look at it and assume that you can't talk to them, because they're not going to pick up the phone to you straight away. Okay, so you're talking to them through your profile. And in everything that I've talked about, because I haven't really talked about messaging and direct messaging to people, because we don't really have time to do that today. We're talking about getting people to reach out to you. They've seen content, they've seen your profile, and you've got to make that attractive and enticing so that they send you a message. Okay, so why are they interested? What benefits are you potentially giving to them to make them actually reach out to you? So how can you help them? You know, ultimately, that's what we're here for. And then this, I think, is so crucial. And this applies as much as if you're a business or as if you're someone who's looking for a new role. Okay, LinkedIn is not just a CV. Okay, you have a CV. Okay, it's not chronological work history, because that's really boring. Okay, that's how it started out, and that's how most people will lay their LinkedIn profiles out. But again, it's that portal into you and your business. Okay, and that's what it needs to be, not just a list of all the things that you've done, all the projects that you've worked on, all the jobs that you had, because that's really, really boring, and someone will just move on very, very quickly. So it's not just a CV. I told you that I would tell you what I do. This is what we do. I'm not going to linger on it. This is not a sales webinar, but Full Circle Property, you know, we provide mentoring, and we take people through the property life cycle, whatever part of the life cycle they want to do. So it's where Full Circle came from, that you can have a completely hands-off, passive interaction in terms of property, or you can be involved or not involved as much as you like. But we like to think that we cover what we call the property life cycle. So that's what we do. So I've kept it hopefully nice and short for those of you that have seen my other webinars that have gone on a little bit longer. I'm going to open it up to questions if anyone has those. I've seen a few things flash up in respect of the chat, so I'll have a look at those. I'm also going to have to put my headphones in to hear you, and let me also, I need to try and find to unmute people if they want. Allow participants to unmute. So if you want to ask a question, then unmute yourself and ask a question. So I'm going to go through the chat to see what we've got on here. Okay. Do you post in Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn? Do you use the same post or different topics and styles? Do certain ones work best on different platforms? Great question. Different things do work differently on each platform. You know, as an example with Facebook, you know, it is a lot more chatty, a lot more informal. LinkedIn is a bit, you know, is more professional. Instagram clearly is a lot more visual, and I'm not sure that many people actually look at the text of what you put on Instagram. So it should be different to that extent, but it should all be tied in to the same strategy. And in terms of using the same posts, yeah, absolutely. You can either do that on the same day, or you can schedule that. So you put one post on LinkedIn, then on Wednesday you put the same post on Facebook, and then Friday you put the same post on Instagram. Having said all that, I tend to put things out on the same day. A lot of the time it's because it's all linked. So for example, I can't remember which way around it is, but it's Facebook or Instagram. You post on one of those and it says, that, do you want to post on the other one? And that saves you time to do that. So generally I'll post the same thing across all platforms at the same time. So for Instagram, you're told not to use top hashtags as the posts get lost. Is that not the same for LinkedIn? There's less engagement and there's less use of hashtags on LinkedIn. So I'd suggest that that's different, but it's always a bit of test and adjust for that. Hashtags aren't searched as much on LinkedIn as they are on Instagram, and I suspect on Twitter. I don't use Twitter at all, so I have no expertise in that. But it's not used as much, so I think using those hashtags is probably more beneficial on LinkedIn than it might be on other platforms. I think Saturday morning isn't a bad time to post, which catches people doing some weekend reading. Absolutely, test and adjust, and if Saturday morning works for you, then great. Personally, it doesn't work for me, but again, we have different audiences as well. So try these things out, and you might find again your niche that's there. What kind of groups do you find are good to attract investors? Nothing particular. Just have a search on LinkedIn for property and investing, and you'll find some groups. Again, I think with the groups, it's part of that wider strategy that you have. You're not going to put something in a group and someone says, fantastic, yeah, I want to come and invest a load of money with you. They're going to have a look at that post. They're going to then perhaps follow you. They're going to see some of your other content, have a look back at what articles you've got, and then reach out to you. So being able to determine exactly where your clients have come from on LinkedIn is very, very difficult unless you ask them. So again, test and adjust, and there's no harm in posting into groups. So is having likes and comments the aim to be noticed, or the reach on your posts, which can be drastically different? So Sam, I'm not quite sure I understand the question on that one. If you want to unmute and give me a shout if you can. Let me see if I'll try and unmute you.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah. So my question. So for example, that post that you showed, that you have like over 5,000 people that read it.
Yeah.
Like the comments and likes were like in like the hundreds. So
yeah.
They were quite different. So having the reach is. I was just trying to get my head around. Is it like in Instagram? Obviously, you want to have like lots of likes and comments for the algorithm for it to work.
Yeah.
Is it the same for LinkedIn, or is the reach more important?
Yeah, it works in the same way. The more people that comment and the more people that like your post, the further it's going to go. And it's similar. And I use Instagram, but my VA uses Instagram. I don't really have a great deal of knowledge about that, but I would assume it works in the same way. The more likes, the more comments that you have, the more people that go and see it.
Mm.
So a view is something like they've had a look at your post for 2 or 4 seconds, I think it is. So they go hand in hand together ultimately, and the more comments and likes that you can get, the further reach that you do get.
Okay, thanks.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so I've built up my own LinkedIn profile off the back of my day job profession. What's the best way to make transition into property, or do you create a new profile? Great question, and it's one that a lot of people struggle with. Now, you can't have 2 profiles on LinkedIn, okay? I suspect if you did it, you're going to get away with it, but if you get caught, then they'll close both of your profiles. So in my opinion, it's not worth doing. Again, you can have business pages, but they're not particularly great in terms of reach. LinkedIn is difficult if you have a job and you're a property investor, or if you're a property investor but also do something completely different. If you have multiple businesses, for example, it is difficult, and there's no real nice solution to it. You've just got to pick one and go with that. And that causes people challenges, of course, especially in the property world, where they do have their day job and they don't want to be 100% property investing in terms of their profile, because of course their day job takes precedence. So it's a difficult one in all honesty. Now it does say you're making the transition to that. At some point, you may well concentrate 100% on property, and that's when you can go all in. You just need to think about your own individual circumstances, about what sort of content you can post, and whether that is acceptable to your day job or whether that's detrimental. Okay. Yeah, I think a similar question, Sam, as well. Property developer, but also a mortgage broker. Can you combine your roles? Absolutely. I mean, you look at it from if you're investing in property, the fact that you've then got a background as a mortgage broker is your USP. That's your story. How many transactions have you helped with as a mortgage broker? Hundreds. Okay, there's your expertise. So tie it all in if you can. Now, a lot of mortgage brokers are self-employed. If you are, then great, tie that all in. If there is an impact in terms of your day job, just try and kind of work that out. But if not, as a new property developer, absolutely, I'll play on your background as a broker. That's massively beneficial, and it gives you great credibility. Gives you experience that you can play on, even if you're relatively new in that particular area of property. So it's absolutely combine it if you can. Fab. Those are all the questions that I've got on the text. Anyone else got any questions that they want to ask? If you do, hopefully be able to mute yourself. If not, wave furiously. Just got someone who's unmuting themselves. Anyone want to ask any questions? If not, I will wrap it up. Okay, Gary.
Yeah. You mentioned about articles.
Yeah.
And that you use articles quite a bit. Where do you get your inspiration for the article? Where do you take it from? For someone who's not particularly great for inspiration and words, where do you get it from, and how long do they tend to be? I guess a bit more explanation around articles would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just find So another presentation. I'm gonna have to try and do some multitasking here, and of course that's generally not possible as a bloke. There's I mean, it depends what you're interested in, really. You know, because actually, if you're going to sit down and write something that's 500, 2,000 words, it has to be interesting to you. Okay, if it's interesting to you, then it's probably going to be interesting to someone else. So I've written articles on being an accidental landlord, because I was one at one point in time, and it's the way that a lot of people get into property. I've written articles on brokers, why it should be why you should always use a mortgage broker, and the benefits of doing that. Advantages of investing in property. An article that I'm in the middle of writing, which may actually turn into a bit more of a book, which I'm going to give people a preview of next time. It's the disadvantages of investing in property. At the moment, that is 17. But it's what are the disadvantages of investing in property, and how do you overcome them? So it's not a negative, but it's telling people, actually, if you get it wrong, then these are the risks and these are the implications that you can have, but this is how you overcome them. So I think it's about trying to find things that are interesting, that you think, if you went back in time 5 years, perhaps, to wherever your journey started, what do you wish that you knew? You can also use it as a bit of a fact-finding mission as well. If you don't know something about a particular area, well, perhaps go and search it, and do some research and collect that, and then tell everyone about it.
And do you reference any reference material you've looked at for that article?
Yeah, absolutely. If there's something that I've lent on from that, definitely, 100%. Most of the stuff out there, is not new. It's not reinventing the wheel. And it's putting your take on it. But if there is something that you've read a couple of articles and you're praising them, for example, and you're giving a summary of them, then absolutely reference it. So a lot of material that I take in terms of the new stuff, not articles specifically, comes from Savills, especially the commercial piece, and I'll always reference that when I put that out there. So absolutely, yes, do that.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks.
Cool. So Debbie's put something up here which is interesting. So LinkedIn only gives you 1,500 words, I think. So okay, so I think that's in terms of your character count. I think it's about 1,500 characters, which is a lot less words, I think. I might be wrong on that, but certainly, if you're writing, it's probably about 4 or 5 paragraphs. Anything more than that, you can't. LinkedIn won't allow you to do that. You can still use that on Facebook, and Instagram has a character limit as well, which I think is a little bit restrictive. But absolutely, after that, then turn it into an article. Also, don't be perturbed when you don't get that many views on your article. So it'll come up in terms of my stats that on average, my post will get seen about anywhere between 1,500 and 3,000 times. If a post is half decent. If I put an article out there, it'll come up and say 100 people have viewed it. So they don't get viewed that many times. But again, the benefits of it is that you can repurpose that content, because then you've got 2,000 words that you can use elsewhere. You can turn that into a video, you can turn that into a live, and it's that referenceability that you can put on your LinkedIn profile, that comes up and says, look, I've written this article, and it's searchable in Google. So if you're doing lots of posts and then you write that article and then you go, wow, hardly anyone's looked at it, that's okay. Don't take that as a big negative. That happens. Or if it doesn't happen to everyone, it just happens to me. I don't know. But yeah, I think that you do get less people who view it. I think the algorithm is somewhat different to how long you have to be on an article to read it for it to count as a view rather than a post. Fab. I think that's probably it. Unless anyone has any more questions. Cool, great stuff. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was useful. And I'll see people for my final Blue Oak webinar next week, which is it's on the 17 disadvantages of investing in property and how to overcome them. So thank you very much for your time this evening. If you have any other questions or anything like that, then you know where to find me. Stuart.thomas@fullcirclemanagement.co.uk, or look me up on LinkedIn and send me a message. Okay, great stuff. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.